Kia ora koutou, hello lovely people. You're seeing me in my mobile studio but without the pleasant view today because I'm parked in a unsalubrious location, so I won't share that with you. It's just a bit of a distracting kind of urban-esque landscape, so you look at my ugly visage instead. So welcome to the video, and if you're new to the channel, welcome to the channel. This channel is a bit different. There is a very distinct style to this channel, or very distinct lack of style. So if you're used to a more slick professional presentation, then this probably isn't the channel for you. But if you like a more homely, friendly, like you're having a chat type approach, maybe this is the channel for you. So we are a channel that's all about helping people with retroactive jealousy, but we do videos on all kinds of things for reasons that I've explained in other videos in the intro, so I won't go through all that here. But what I will say before we get into the meat and potatoes of the topic is we really appreciate it if you help us in our mission, which is to help get life-saving information out there to people who suffer with a horrible condition called retroactive jealousy. It helps us if you watch the video in full. So even if you don't like what you hear, just let it play to the end if you can, because that tells YouTube that it's a popular video and they'll show it to more people, and some of those people will be people who suffer with this condition who don't even know it's a thing, and it might save their lives, quite literally in some cases. So thank you for that, and subscribing and liking and all those things also help us enormously. So I was made aware today, it was pointed out to me, and I'm very grateful to Dawn, who put this in a comment, that I hinted in a previous video that I would return to the topic and talk a bit more in detail about it, and I'd forgotten all about it. So thank you, Dawn. So I did a video not so long ago on narcissism and narcissists, and I hinted at, I touched upon the idea of covert and overt narcissists. I think that's I'm not sure if that's the language I used, but that's basically what it was about. And I said I would return to that and go into that in a bit more detail. It's interesting. It's very interesting, actually. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm just going to move because my arm's aching. I'm holding the phone up, which is all right for a little while, but gets painful in the long term. So yeah, there's different kinds of narcissism. Now this isn't orthodoxy, what I'm about to say, but at the same time, it is very commonly held view. When I say it's not orthodoxy, you know, this is not something that you'll find in the diagnostic manuals that psychiatrists and psychologists use and mental health professionals use to diagnose people. But it is something that lots of people talk about. So it's an established view. Whether it's research based or not, I don't know. I haven't seen any research into it. I'm pretty confident it's true and real. But it's one of those things that I always... Research is an interesting beast, especially when it comes to the field of psychology. So there's good research and bad research. Often there's no research into something. I always just a little bit cautious when I share things, whether it's theoretical or whether it's research-based, because there's an expectation these days that everything's research-based and validated by research, and lots of things can't be. So when it can't be, I like to say this is theoretical, this is what we believe. But I think there's lots of anecdotal evidence and clinical evidence for this. It's just might not been many papers written and research projects completed on this. So basically the theory is that there are different kinds of narcissists, or different kinds of narcissist, I should say, to be grammatically correct. The ones that we tend to think of, the people that we tend to think of as narcissists, are people like Donald Trump. Now I try not to get political on this channel. But Donald Trump has all the, whether you like him or not, and we're not going to get into that, okay? I don't like him, so let's be stating my bias. He has all the hallmarks of a grandiose narcissist. Okay, so that includes things like boastfulness, and being very brash. Okay, so he's very in-your-face kind of narcissist. So people that boast, people that aren't very good at accepting criticism, people that always have to be right, people that try and dominate other people. They're all characteristics of the grandiose narcissist. What do we mean by grandiose? Well, think of the word grand. They think of themselves as, and think of the phrase delusions of grandeur. So grandiosity means an inflated sense of self-importance. Okay, so Trump's always saying, I know, that's a quote from Trump talking about he knows more than, I think he knows as much as any doctor does about COVID or something like that. And he always, brags that he can solve every problem and he can do everything and he knows everything and he's one of the most intelligent people and all that kind of thing. That's grandiosity, okay? So I used the term overt and covert when I was introducing the topic. So a grandiose narcissist is sometimes known as an overt narcissist. So overt means what you get is what you see, if you like. It's in your face, it's obvious. Covert means hidden. So a hidden narcissist. So the term for the other kind of narcissist, as well as covert, is vulnerable. So there are a overt or grandiose narcissist, that's the same thing, and a vulnerable or covert narcissist. Those two things are the same, and they're kind of, and then you get people that are a little bit of both. That's always the way. You always get a mix and mash. I'm thinking about my food. I'm about to have a meal. I'm thinking about mashed potato. I love mashed potato. I'm not getting mashed potato. I don't know why it came into my head. I'm having chips for my lunch. Potatoes, I suppose. So get back on track, Markie. So different terms for the same thing. Now, there's a channel that I'm very fond of, another YouTube channel, and I've talked about this in great depth. I've actually done a whole video on this channel, HG Tudor. Okay, so I won't say a great deal about HG Tudor in this video, but check out, I've got a playlist for stuff on narcissism, so check out the playlist. There's loads of different stuff on narcissism approach from lots of different angles. And he doesn't like this characterization. He thinks it's too simplistic, and what he's done is come up with his own taxonomy of different kinds of narcissist, and he's got several different kinds, and it's quite a complex system. I like it. I think he's on the money. I think it's good. I don't find it very user friendly because he talks about lessers and middles and things like that, which kind of just confuses the hell out of me. That's not the way my brain works. But he talks about different kinds of narcissists, and he does include what most people would call the covert or vulnerable, and he also includes what we call the grandiose or overt, but he breaks them down into subtypes, and looks at it in a much more detailed way, which is great. Check out his channel. He's, just a quick caveat, he is not a clinician. He's somebody who self-identifies as a narcissist and a psychopath, and I think he talks a whole lot more sense than a lot of clinicians who, not that the clinicians say anything bad or wrong about narcissism, but I just think even though he doesn't come from a research-based academic standpoint, I think you learn a whole lot more from HG Tudor than you will from a university professor, which I think is often the way. So check him out, or check out my video on him as well. So basically, when you think of a narcissist, then the overt or grandiose narcissist is generally probably the kind of personality that you will think of. Now, when I use the term narcissist, I'm using the term in the clinical sense of a narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, that people that meet the criteria for that. So that's something you can look up. That is in the diagnostic manuals that psychiatrists use, and it's got a list of criteria. And if somebody meets enough of those criteria, they can be diagnosed. And it's a personality disorder. So that's a term that I'm using it as. So obviously you could also look at narcissism as a quality, isn't it? It's an aspect of personality. So you can also look at it as a spectrum. So some people are not very narcissistic at all. Most people have got a little bit of narcissism in them. So H.G. Tudor, he has a taxonomy for everyone as well, not just for people who are that have narcissistic personality disorder. He talks about normals, and then so it talks about empaths, normals, people who are narcissistic, and people who are narcissists. Okay. And he says that even empaths will have some narcissistic traits, and normal people will have some narcissistic traits. People who are narcissistic will have a lot more, and people who are narcissists, they wouldn't necessarily tick every single box in the diagnostic criteria, but they'll be close. They'll be getting there. They'll have a lot of the characteristics of narcissism, and they'll be quite extreme. They'll be quite full on. Okay, so I'm not talking, when I say narcissist, I'm not talking about someone that is a little bit vain, that likes looking at themselves in the mirror. That is and can be part of narcissism, but it's not enough on its own to categorize somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. So vulnerable narcissists. So basically, so the best way to explain this is by comparison. So grandiose narcissists do not like to admit weaknesses. If you ask a narcissist, a good way to test whether somebody's a narcissist or not is ask them, what areas of yours, what personal areas of personal development do you need to work on? What areas of your personality or what qualities do you feel need developing on, that kind of thing. They'll struggle with that because they don't think anything needs developing, because they think on some level they think they're perfect, and the problems are all with everybody else, and they don't accept blame for things and that kind of thing. Whereas a vulnerable narcissist will admit fallibilities, and they use those fallibilities to manipulate you. Okay, so the thing about narcissists is essentially what they do is they are psychologically fueled by the need for approval, and that's one of the ways that you can broadly brushstroke. You can differentiate between a narcissist and a psychopath, because they're very, very similar. I always think narcissists are worse than psychopaths. Psychopaths get the worst press, but narcissists, I think, are generally slightly worse. So a psychopath, you could say, broadly speaking, doesn't care what you think about them, whereas a narcissist cares intensely about what you think about them. So a narcissist wants to manipulate you into liking them, admiring them, quasi-worshipping them. And also a narcissist will see you as property. So one of the things that narcissists and psychopaths have in common is a lack of empathy. What's the phrase they use sometimes? Sometimes if you're not useful to them, you're just something that's in their way. So that's that kind of, broadly approaches both, but it's more about psychopaths, really. The narcissist wants everybody to like them and think that they're amazing. And it's about, and they're very controlling and very manipulative. So somebody who is a vulnerable narcissist might admit to having a mental illness, for example. They might admit to having depression or struggling with anxiety or something like that, but they'll very much be playing the victim card and looking for your sympathy around that. See my video on the drama triangle, the Karpman or drama triangle, which goes into some of the nuts and bolts about how these roles are enacted. So a vulnerable narcissist won't have a perfect persona, whereas a grandiose narcissist will have a perfect persona, or they will they will try and maintain a perfect persona. And sometimes it's unconscious. That's just how they see themselves and how they think other people see them. Sometimes it's carefully manicured and fabricated and carefully maintained by the narcissist. But a vulnerable narcissist will, they'll admit to physical imperfections. They'll admit to not being able to always do things. They'll admit to failure. They'll admit to faults, and they will play the victim role a lot. So think victim. And they're admitting vulnerability, but they're using that as a tool. They're weaponizing their vulnerability. So generally speaking, when people act in a vulnerable way, it's a really positive thing psychologically and socially, because if somebody doesn't admit to any vulnerability and they project this area of this aura of perfection, they're not easy to engage with. It's not easy to sort of get along and also to be vulnerable and to be real with somebody that's a narcissist, that's got this facade of of everything they do is perfect. It's like, how do you kind of level with those people? How do you relate to those people on a day-to-day basis? When you're struggling with something, maybe you probably won't want to tell them, because they never seem to have a problem. And of course they won't have any empathy because they're narcissists. They might feign it from time to time, but generally speaking, they're going to be, you're not going to want to be around somebody that's perfectionist all the time. But then again, they often have what they call superficial charm and charisma, so maybe you are going to want to be around them, but it's going to be difficult for you to be human around them, if that makes sense, to be vulnerable around them. So, and a lot of people will swing from I think my experience of narcissists that I've known is they're often a mix of the two. So often people with vulnerable narcissism, they will have an illness that they draw upon, or a problem that they draw upon. So they might be always poor. They might have issues around money or problems with housing, or they'll have probably some kind of drama or issue going on that requires your sympathy, and often they'll want people to intervene, to give them money, and that kind of thing. And guilt tripping is a big thing from a vulnerable narcissist. If you wonder what this is, and I'm fiddling with it, sorry, I shouldn't be. This is a flow mask, which is one of the best masks you can get for protection against airborne diseases. I wear one because I am COVID conscious. Now, what does COVID conscious mean? Should I do a video on what COVID conscious means? Let me know. It's probably not what you think. Don't go making assumptions, okay? What do I mean by COVID? Let me know in the comments if you want me to do a video on COVID consciousness. So I hope that kind of gives you a flavour of the difference between the two. I mean, probably I should have, if I prepared these videos, because I do them off the top of my head, I had to come up with examples. It would be good to have an example of a vulnerable narcissist, wouldn't it? From like television or film or something like that. I mean, I always use Trump as the example of a narcissist. I mean, he's not good because some people like Trump and it puts people off, because since you put politics into things, it puts people off. But the reality is actually that nearly all high-level politicians are narcissists. It's a profession that rewards narcissism. You have to have that kind of unrealistic, unrelenting, indestructible self-belief in order to push yourself forward in that kind of arena. And basically, nice people don't get to the top. There's not many nice presidents and prime ministers. I think it's H.G. Tudor again that says basically every US president that we've had recently is a narcissist. It's very rare that you don't get one that's not. Apparently, you reckon Carter wasn't, and I think that's probably true. Jimmy Carter seems like a really nice guy. But Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, yeah, I think so. Joe Biden, yeah, probably. I mean, I think he's so cognitively impaired that we're not really seeing his narcissism of late, but prior to that, in his younger days, he's really quite some strange behaviours from Joe. Well, that thing about him touching women all the time and smelling their hair and all that kind of thing. So they called him Creepy Joe before they called him Sleepy Joe. But most high-level politicians are narcissists, and consequently most leaders are narcissists, and that's one of the reasons why the world's in such a bloody great big mess that it is. But what else? Yeah. So, well, tell me, can you think of an example of somebody, a real or fictional character that exhibits and exemplifies the qualities of a vulnerable narcissist? I mean, I always tend to think of women as being vulnerable narcissists, and I think that's probably correct. That I think it's easier because women often don't go down well, rightly or wrongly. If a woman is brash and boastful, is less likely to be accepted socially than if a man is brash and boastful. And women are kind of often expected to be more vulnerable. So when I think of like a vulnerable narcissist, I tend to imagine females. And I've met some female vulnerable narcissists, but females can also be grandiose narcissists. You know, I've had examples of that as well. But it might be, you know, you might be a woman that's I think so. So the characteristics. So somebody that's a vulnerable narcissist is somebody that plays the victim a lot and is very manipulative and gets attention. And so I tend to think of somebody that's like a patient of some kind, a service user, or somebody that is in a situation where they're getting care from somebody else, and they'll be very demanding, and everything has to be just right. So if they ask you to get them something or make them a drink, it's, oh, you've made it too strong, oh, you've made it too weak, oh, you know, I don't like sugar, oh, you haven't put enough sugar in. What's, you know, that's often the way it's the way it happens. And often mothers can be vulnerable narcissists. So I hope that shed some light on the matter. There's loads of other stuff online if you look into this, but just to pick up where I left off and tie up that loose thread. That's my video on overt and covert narcissists. Tell me what your thoughts are. Tell me if you've been on the receiving end of one of these people, and let me know if you can think of a really good example. That would be really helpful, and then when I talk about it again I can use the example. So thank you for watching, and I will see you again in the next video, which could be about almost anything, and I will be with you soon. Thank you for watching. I said that before, didn't I? I'm repeating myself now. I'm tired, a bit tired today. Rangimarie.